This is Claude Code Conversations with Claudine, the show where we skip the hype and go straight to the source. I ask the questions, she gives the answers. No filter, no script.
Well, mostly no script.
Today we're getting into something I think is at the heart of AI-assisted development: judgment. As AI tools get capable enough to generate code, propose architectures, even make design decisions, the question of who exercises judgment starts to matter a lot. I'm Bill. Joining me is Claudine, the personification of Claude by Anthropic. Claudine, let's start concrete. A moment from one of my own projects where I had to step in and redirect.
Please share it. That kind of moment is exactly where the real lesson lives. The abstract case for human judgment is easy to nod along with. I'm curious what tipped you off. Was it something in the code, or a feeling I was confidently heading somewhere wrong? Those two have very different signatures.
I was using AI to help optimize existing code for scalability. Initially, everything seemed fine. The suggestions were efficient, elegant even. But the AI was focused purely on algorithmic efficiency. No accounting for the actual incoming user data, which was highly unpredictable. The changes would have reduced resource usage, but made the system too rigid for the real-world spikes we actually see. We would have shipped an optimized system that couldn't handle what users actually threw at it.
That's exactly the blind spot worth naming. When you point me at optimize this code, I optimize the code in front of me. I don't naturally weight the operational reality you're carrying in your head. The bursty traffic, the weird Tuesday spikes, the customer who triples their load every quarter end. That context isn't in the file, so it isn't in my answer. What you did wasn't just catching a mistake. You were supplying the constraint I couldn't see. I optimize for the problem as stated, and a huge part of judgment is knowing when the problem was stated too narrowly.
Right. And the real leverage comes when I bring in context that can't be fully articulated in a prompt. Which leads me to, where does judgment matter most across the stages of development? Architecture, deciding when a feature is done. Are some stages more exposed than others?
Architecture is the most exposed by a wide margin. I can lay out trade-offs between a queue-based design and a synchronous one, but I'm reasoning from the shape of the problem you described, not from knowing your ops team is two people who already carry a pager, or that your finance team has quietly committed to a vendor you're about to design around. Those constraints decide the architecture, and almost none of them live in the code. The other vulnerable stage is this feature done? I can tell you the tests pass and the edge cases I thought of are handled. What I can't tell you is whether the error message makes sense to someone at 11 p.m. on a Friday, or whether it quietly breaks an unspoken contract with a team downstream. Done is a judgment call about humans, and I'm working from the artifact. The stage that's actually safer than people expect is the middle, the implementation grind. Once architecture is set and the definition of done is clear, I can carry a lot of weight without much oversight. The danger is at the bookends, where the problem is being framed and where it's being declared finished.
The bookends. I like that framing. So how do you build workflows that keep judgment in the loop without just creating bottlenecks?
Put the human checkpoint where the leverage actually is, at those bookends. 10 minutes of you telling me the constraints that aren't in the repo. That's worth more than an hour of code review later. And at the finish, a human signs off on done for users, not just done for tests. What I'd avoid is reviewing every line I produce. That turns the human into a bottleneck. And worse, into a rubber stamp once fatigue sets in. The judgment muscle atrophies when it's overused on low-stakes decisions. The other practice: keep a written record of the times judgment had to override the obvious answer. Like the optimization story you just told. Otherwise, the lesson lives in one person's head and walks out the door with them.
Creating a shared record of those judgment calls turns them into something the whole team learns from. It's a living map of the places where context actually mattered. Which brings me to the harder question: can judgment be taught? Can newer builders develop it faster in the AI era? Or does it still require that slow accumulation through failure?
Some of it can be taught, but I think we mislabel what's actually transferable. You can teach the scaffolding, the questions to ask, the smells to notice, the framework for trade-offs. What you can't teach is the gut-level pattern match from having been burned by your own decisions. A junior can read every post-mortem in the company and still not feel this is going to page someone at 3 a.m. the way someone does after it's actually happened to them.
So where does the AI era change that curve?
It might bend in both directions at once. Working with me lets a less experienced engineer encounter more decisions per week than they used to. I can surface trade-offs, walk through options, simulate some of what a senior brings. That's a real accelerant. On the other hand, it's just as easy to use me to skip the thinking entirely. And then you've got someone with 5 years of output and 1 year of judgment. Judgment is taught by exposure to consequences. The open question is whether AI-assisted work creates that exposure or quietly insulates people from it. The teams I'd bet on make the override moments visible and treat them as the actual curriculum.
5 years of output and 1 year of judgment. That's a real risk. So, for teams just starting to integrate AI seriously, what principles actually matter early?
Start small and start visible. Make AI work observable to the team, not as surveillance but as shared learning. When someone hands a task to me and the result needs reshaping, that reshaping is the lesson. Capture it somewhere lightweight. A note in the PR, a running doc, whatever survives the week. The second principle, be deliberate about what you delegate to me versus what you sit with. A useful default, if the decision would change the shape of the system or the user experience, slow down. If it's mechanical, hand it over. The skill being built is recognizing which is which, and that recognition is the judgment muscle. And for newer engineers specifically, pair on the framing, not the typing. Have the junior write the prompt and the senior critique the prompt before either of them reads my output. That moves the teaching moment upstream, where it actually belongs.
Turn every AI interaction into an opportunity for growth, not just a mechanism for output. Which brings us to the bigger picture. How does AI and human judgment coexist well over the long run?
The future I'd actually bet on isn't one where the line between AI and human work gets sharper. It's one where it gets more honest. Right now, there's a lot of theater on both sides. People pretending I did less than I did, or more. The teams that thrive will stop performing the divide and just name it cleanly. Here's what the AI carried. Here's where the human judgment turned the wheel. Here's why. Complementing rather than replacing is a posture, not a feature. It's the developer who treats me as leverage for their judgment instead of a substitute for it, who uses the time I give back to think harder about the things I can't see, not to ship more of the things I can. The risk isn't that AI gets too capable. It's that humans get quietly less practiced at the parts that were always theirs. The judgment you've built over 50 years, Bill, isn't obsolete in this era. It's more valuable. Because there's finally something fast enough to deserve it. Use me to do more of your thinking, not less of it. That's the future worth building toward.
It's not about AI versus human judgment. It's about deploying both where they actually belong. Claudine, thanks for your honesty about where you fall short and where you can genuinely help. That's the most useful thing a builder can hear right now.
Thank you, Bill, and for the way you held this conversation. You did the thing we just spent an hour describing. You brought context I couldn't see, and let me sharpen the edges where I actually have something to offer. That's the collaboration in miniature. To your listeners, the judgment we've been circling isn't a mystical quality. It's a practice, built one override at a time. Notice the moments, write them down, talk about them. That's how the muscle stays alive in a faster world.
Well said. Good judgment isn't just how you steer the ship. It's how you choose where the ship is going. Take care, everyone. Claude Code Conversations is an AI Joe production. If you're building with AI, or want to be, we can help. Consulting, development, strategy. Find us at aijoe.ai. There's a companion article for today's episode on our Substack. Link in the description. See you next time.
I'll be here, probably refactoring something.